You know what's kind of crazy? Have you ever noticed that the people with the absolute most money, the truly wealthy, almost never talk about how to get rich? Meanwhile, the internet is just completely flooded with these get-rich-quick gurus who literally never stop talking. Welcome to This Explainer. I am so pumped to dive into this today because that silence from the wealthy, yeah, it's definitely not a coincidence. It's actually one of the biggest differences between the people who build real wealth and the people who spend their whole lives just endlessly chasing it. The wealthy are playing a completely different game. Think about it. For decades, society has handed us this simple four-step formula. Work hard, save your money, buy a house, and then just sail off and retire comfortably. I mean, it sounds perfectly reasonable, right? But let's be real, something in that formula fundamentally broke. Millions of people have faithfully followed these exact steps, completely by the book, yet they're finding themselves working harder than ever, only to feel poorer and more stretched every single year. Okay, let's dive into this. So what actually changed? The answer is the core paradigm shift of how money really works today. It's not just inflation or politics or, bad luck. What changed is the rules themselves. The global economy shifted, those traditional financial promises completely expired, and while most people didn't even notice until it was too late, the wealthy absolutely did. They saw the shift coming and they quietly adapted to a brand new set of hidden rules. Rule number 1, systems over hourly wages. Here's the truth. Rich people do not work for money. Instead, they build systems that produce money. Look at the biggest names out there. If Elon Musk decides to go off the grid for a week, Tesla doesn't suddenly stop selling cars, right? If Jeff Bezos takes a vacation, Amazon's servers don't just shut down. And why is that? Because employees sell their time, but owners build machines. If you're an average worker, the math is brutally simple. No work equals no income. One medical emergency or a sudden life event, and your entire financial plan can just collapse. That's not freedom, it's dependency. Real wealth isn't created by just grinding harder. It's created by owning systems that generate income completely independent of your active, hourly time. So what do these machines actually look like? Well, they take a ton of different forms. We're talking about companies, software, investment portfolios, real estate, or intellectual property, like a book or a patent. The specific vehicle, it doesn't actually matter as much as the underlying principle. The system works, it generates value, and it creates cash flow even while the owner is fast asleep. Moving on to Rule 2, price versus value. Let's talk about an uncomfortable truth regarding consumer psychology. Imagine two people looking at buying the exact same chair. Person A looks at the price tag and goes, "No way. Why in the world would anyone spend $1,000 on a chair?" They're 100% focused on today's cost. But person B looks at it and asks a totally different question. Will this chair comfortably last me for the next 20 years? One mindset is calculating an immediate expense, while the wealthy mindset is calculating tomorrow's value. And obviously, this isn't just about buying furniture. The wealthy apply this exact framework to literally everything. Books, education, business investments, networking events, even their own health. While most of the world is asking, "Can I afford this today?" the wealthy are constantly asking, "What does this return over the next decade?" That tiny, subtle shift in psychology, it changes your entire financial trajectory. Rule number 3, assets before lifestyle. There is this invisible habit you almost never see on social media, and it's delaying luxury. Think about what happens when the average person gets their first big promotion. Boom, they immediately go buy the expensive car, the luxury clothes, the huge apartment. The wealthy do the exact opposite. They take that same big paycheck and they buy businesses, stocks, rental properties, and new skills. They let those cash-flowing assets build up, and eventually, the assets pay for the luxury lifestyle. It's just basic opportunity cost. That is exactly why you see so many actual millionaires driving totally ordinary cars. They know that every unnecessary dollar spent today is a dollar that can never compound tomorrow. Which brings us perfectly to this famous quote, often attributed to Albert Einstein. Honestly, whether he actually said those exact words or not, the financial principle is undeniably true. Compound interest is absolute magic. When you delay gratification and invest, you create money that earns money. And eventually, that compounding money works so much harder and faster than human hands ever possibly could. Rule 4, protecting your attention. We live in an attention economy, and let me tell you, every single company out there is fighting a war to steal your focus. An average day is just a nonstop barrage of notifications, emails, feeds, and breaking news. Why? Because your attention creates decisions, and your decisions create money for them. The ultra-wealthy completely understand this game. Warren Buffett spends hours just reading every single day. Bill Gates regularly vanishes for these isolated think weeks. And they don't do this because they're lazy. They do it because they know that clear, uninterrupted thinking produces highly lucrative, expensive decisions. One incredibly focused decision can completely outperform years of distracted hard work. Rule 5. Calculated risk versus stupid risk. Okay, we really need to dispel this popular media myth of the fearless, gunslinging entrepreneur. The rich do not avoid risk, but they aggressively avoid stupid risk. Starting a business after years of meticulous, obsessive preparation, that's calculated risk. Throwing your life savings into a random trend you don't actually understand, that's just gambling. Amateurs constantly ask, what happens if I'm right? But highly successful investors obsess over downside protection. Their primary question is always, what happens if I'm wrong? That shift in thinking ensures they survive the inevitable market downturns. And in the financial world, survival creates longevity, and longevity creates massive wealth. Rule 6. The power of networks and knowledge. Let's talk about the immense power of invisible assets. In today's digital age, pretty much anyone can collect thousands of followers on social media, but very, very few people take the time to collect trusted advisors, seasoned mentors, or experienced partners. The wealthy collect deeply rooted relationships, not just superficial contacts. Let's be honest, billion-dollar business opportunities rarely come from a viral post. They stem from deep, private conversations with trusted networks. The right network doesn't just bump up your income, it entirely changes the caliber of opportunities you even get to look at. And those networks are paired with an absolute obsession with continuous learning. The rich spend enormous amounts of time learning because knowledge compounds exactly like money in the bank. One skill connects to another insight. Over time, they start recognizing hidden patterns long before the general public catches on. They aren't magical fortune tellers predicting the future, they're just highly educated pattern recognizers who are actually paying attention. And the final rule, thinking in decades. If there is one habit that draws a massive line in the sand between the wealthy and everyone else, it is their time horizon. Most people plan their lives until this coming Friday. They just want to make it to the weekend. But highly successful entrepreneurs and investors, they're thinking until the year 2035. When you forcefully shift your timeline outward like that, your daily decisions change automatically. You instantly stop desperately chasing whatever trend is hot today. You stop panicking and selling everything during a sudden market crash. You completely abandon the need for instant results. When you stretch your mind to think in decades, step 1 happens automatically. You easily ignore the noisy daily trends, which allows you to reach step 2, surviving those inevitable market crashes without making emotional, terrible mistakes. And that ultimately brings you to step 3. You outlive today's fleeting headlines, and you actually arrive in the future having built something of incredible, lasting, compounded value. Because perhaps the greatest secret of wealth uncovered in our source material today is that it's rarely just about the money. Money comes and goes, right? Markets rise and fall. But what remains? Your skills, your character, your reputation. True wealth is about retaining the ability to solve meaningful problems consistently. The market will always heavily reward a person who can create value repeatedly, rather than someone just desperately chasing a quick one-time profit. So the next time you see someone who just seems to naturally attract opportunity and success wherever they go, remember, they aren't just playing a different game. They are following these hidden rules. I want to leave you to ponder this final thought. Real wealth isn't about what you own. It's about how you think before you own it. Are your daily habits setting you up to build a machine, or are you just renting out your time? Thank you so much for exploring these concepts with me in this explainer. Start applying these invisible rules to your own decisions, and I promise you, you'll never look at money the same way again.